Alright, welcome everyone. My name is Prez, and this is the start of my tutorial series on the F-14B Tomcat by Heatblur in DCS. I'm making this tutorial series to help people of all skill levels who are interested in the Tomcat become well accustomed to her systems, characteristics, and weapons in a way that is both informative and easy to understand. Don't get me wrong, there's a lot of detailed information already out there on the F-14, a lot of which is very informative but hard to absorb, and some of which are very helpful but they lack good explanation. Overall, it can be a bit overwhelming for people just starting out. In this first video, I will be taking you through the cold start procedure for the Pilot and RIO in the simplest way possible. There's a lot of buttons in this full fidelity module, so it's best you learn which ones you need to push and not worry about the rest. So without further ado, let's hop into a cockpit. Now the simplest way to go ahead and open up a cold start for the Tomcat would just be to open up instant action on the right hand side, select your F-14 module, and just click cold start. Alrighty, now that we're loaded in, the briefing menu will pop up. You just gotta hit fly. And now we are in the Tomcat cockpit. As you can see, there's a lot of buttons and switches, and there's all the different steam gauges. We're just going to zoom in real quick. So, first things first, what you need to know about the Tomcat is that unlike a lot of more modern aircraft like the F-18, F-16, A-10, is that the Tomcat does not have her own auxiliary power unit to start the aircraft up. In order to get power to the Tomcat and air, you'll be needing to open up the communications menu by hitting \, which opens up the menu on the top right. Hit ground crew, go to ground electric power, and select on.
Power. Copy.
There we go. Now that you got a response, you can go ahead and reopen that menu. \,
Ground power is now on.
ground crew, ground air supply, and then connect.
Chief, connect ground air supply.
Alrighty, as you can
Copy.
see, our systems are lighting up.
Ground air supply is now connected.
And now that ground air supply is connected, you can also hear the air coming through, like an air conditioning unit. And next, all you have to do is come down here to the bottom left. There's a switch back here, which is your oxygen switch. It's a little bit obscured by this hose that plugs into your seat. All you got to do is hit that switch forward and your oxygen is now flowing. This will help you not pass out when you're up at 30,000 feet. Now all you got to do is look behind you and hit this red lever up at the top between your ejection handle, and boom, your ejection seat is armed. Now this next step is not necessary at all, but it does help if you have a human RIO behind you. Is right here you have this switch. This is your ICS switch, or your intercom. Just move that to the center, and that turns it on to hot mic. Now you do not need to press a button in order to transmit over radio to your RIO. Your RIO and you have your own intercom system separate from the actual aircraft's radio system. Now that we have that all set up, and because I have Jester in the back to help me out with his RIO startup, all you have to do is open up the Jester AI panel, which is the letter A. And you can either use control and a number, or you can move your head over, as you can see with this line being displayed, and hit A again over an option.
Roger that.
And this time we're going to be selecting startup. And we're going to wait.
ICS com check.
There we go. Jester will ask you for an ICS com check, which is something good and should be happening, between you and your human RIO too. Open this up, and now we have a loud and clear option. So you go ahead and select
Roger that.
loud and clear. He'll say Roger. Jester will start flicking a couple switches, and then he'll lower the canopy and acknowledge that it's ready to start.
I'm closing the canopy.
There he goes. There we go. What we're going to do now is go over here.
Okay, ready to start.
Alrighty, Jester. What we're going to do now is go over here to the throttle. Our throttle controls, if you look at the flaps lever right here, and then look just to the left of it, you'll see a switch with an L and an R for left and right. This is your engine crank, alright? This is how we start the engines, and it doesn't really matter which engine you start first. A lot of procedures will have you start the left one first. Sometimes you can start the right one. It doesn't matter. Just start one of them. So in this case, we're going to go ahead and hit the lever to start cranking the left engine. And now what you'll see is that here in our engine panel, you'll see on RPM, the RPMs have now increased to 30%. Each one of these dashed lines is 10%, so now it's at 30% energy, and you can also hear the actual engine spool up. 30% means that you can now click on the left engine throttle to detent it, which will now start pumping fuel into the throttle and start firing it up. As you can see here, our fuel flow is increasing, our RPM is increasing, and the temperature is also increasing. Now, the engine finishes its spool up at 70% engine RPM. Another thing to note is that you can see right here on the actual engine crank, it has gone back to its default position. That means that you can just instantly start spooling up your right engine as well. But again, it's a good indicator to show that your left engine is done being cranked. So now our left engine is spooled up, so we just hit the lever to the right, start cranking our right engine, and again you can see the RPM is going up, and you can detent the engine about 20 to 30%. So we'll go ahead and detent it. And now the fuel flow is starting to go into the engine. The temperature is increasing, and the RPMs are increasing. Alrighty, now that we have both engines spooled up, we can start with the rest of the startup procedure, which is very simple, and I'm going to have you go through it in a bit of a flow, as some other people, like Ralphie Dude, would have you go through it. We're going to be starting left to right. It's very simple. All you got to do is on your left-hand side here, come down. This panel right here is clearly labeled TACAN. That is your TACAN. You just want to flip this rightmost dial to T/R for transmit and receive. And that's it. If you have a TACAN that you wish to use, then you can obviously adjust your TACAN. Very simple, very simple. If you already know how to use one, you'll know how to use this. Next is our actual radio. The RIO and the Pilot have two separate radios. The Pilot has the ARC-159 radio, and the RIO has the ARC-182 radio. You both have to individually set up your radios, but in this case we have the 159, so the way we turn this on is to set this rightmost gray knob to both, and then if you have presets, then you can just leave it here, but if you want to manually tune it, you go to manual, and then now you can change your radio station. Simple as that. Next up, to the left of your radio is your AFCS, or your Augmented Flight Control Systems. There you go. Just flip all three of these forward to turn them on. Now, to keep in mind, this is not a flight computer. This is simply a way for the aircraft to stabilize itself in the event of, quick movements such as trying to roll. It will actually accelerate your roll rate. Turning it off will slow the roll rate down, etc., etc. So it does help you flying. It helps you land and all that stuff. So just go ahead and leave this on. The only time you would ever turn off one of these is, say, if you're dogfighting, then you would want to turn off the roll. But we'll get into that later when I talk about dogfighting in the Tomcat. Next up, you want to go down here to your engine, or to your throttle controls, and you just want to go ahead and grab this yellow lever and push it all the way forward, depress it, and then go ahead and click on the hinge right here to close. This is the safety for your wing sweep, right? So you don't accidentally hit it and adjust your wing sweep in flight. Next, we want to go just in front of it, hit the master reset button, and then since we are on an airfield, on the left-hand side is your anti-skid and spoiler brake, so you want to set that to both. And then next, all you got to do is go ahead and lower your flaps to full. By default, this is F. And to raise them, it is Shift F. But obviously, you can map that to whatever you want. And next up, we're going to look right over here. Now, as you can see, the sweep, this is your wing sweep meter. This tells you how many degrees your wing is currently swept back. Currently, it is swept back all the way. As you can see here, our wings are already swept fully back. And it is currently set to manual mode, indicated by MAN. We want to be having this set to auto. And if you just go to your controls here, go to search, type in swing, or my bad, wing. You will see right here, there is a wing sweep aft, wing sweep auto, wing sweep bomb, wing sweep forward. The aft and forward is pretty self-explanatory. Forward pushes your wings forward, aft pushes your wings back. What's important here is the auto and bomb mode. Bomb mode is just a fancier term for manual mode. You would be switching to bomb mode when doing bomb runs. Auto mode is what we need to be interested in here. Mine is by default set to Q. And bomb mode is set to left shift Q. You're not going to be hitting these very often. You don't really need to mess with the wing sweep in flight very often. So it's not necessary to put them on, say, your HOTAS. So we'll go back. We'll go ahead and look at our wing sweep and we'll hit Q. And boom, look at that. Set to auto. And as you can see, the wings are now sweeping forward. And as you can see, because our flaps are fully down, our leading edge slats are open, and the spoilers have opened. Now that your wing sweep is set, we'll go ahead and move up to the steam gauges. First, we'll go to our radar altitude. Go ahead and turn this knob with your scroll wheel on your mouse. And a good area to put it is about 350 feet. That's a good altitude. Obviously, you can change it. 5,000 feet, I think, is your maximum. And then all the way down to 0. You can depress the button. It'll start playing a loud noise. That's a test if your radar altimeter is working. Next up, to the right of that, is your barometric altitude. And you would just want to scroll that down, make it as even with 0 as possible. And now we move over to the right to your attitude indicator. And all you have to do is scroll, or not scroll, my bad, just click on it. And it will unlock it. Next up is going to turn on all of our electronic displays, the HUD, the VDI, and the HSD. So down here on your displays control, these 3 switches, flip them up, and as you can see, turned on, turned on, turned on. Now real quick, we're going to move the stick out of the way. You just hit backspace by default. And as you can see here, this is a compass. This will show you your heading and where your waypoints are and the range to your next waypoint. Obviously, that can be adjusted with all these steer commands. But for now, we're going to go to here to the HSD options and click on mode and switch it to TID. And here you can see this is your INS alignment progress bar. As you can see, it's almost done here, but normally it'd start all the way back here. It's going to go all the way to the end here. And yeah, there you go. Jester's finished aligning the INS. That's a good way to just, see where your RIO is in terms of the INS alignment process. It also lets you look at your radar screen when you're in flight and the radar is turned on. Here in a moment, Jester will tell us we're ready to taxi. But to finish up your start, you're going to go here to the right-hand side, and this switch right here, it's a little bit hidden underneath the canopy.
Ready to taxi.
There we go. Jester has told us we're ready to taxi, and all you got to do is flip this switch forward. That powers on our RWR. And now you're completely ready and done starting up. The rest of these are not really necessary to go over. This is simply your light controls panel for your console lights and formation, etc. But we can get to that at another time. Right now, what you need to do in order to start taxiing is to go ahead and disable your parking brake right over here. You want to make sure not to disable the parking brake while the INS is being aligned, or else it will cancel the INS alignment and you'll have to start it all over. There goes our radar altitude being tested. You can't release your parking brake while INS is being aligned, or else it will cancel it, and that is just a that is just a system inside of the Tomcat to make sure the INS doesn't mess up during alignment. But now that your parking brake is released, you can go ahead and press N, I believe is the default for nose wheel steering, which if you just go to controls, search, type in nose right here, autopilot reference nose wheel steering toggle, set should be N. And once you press N to enable nose wheel steering, you'll see on the left hand side of the cockpit is our NWS engage, or nose wheel steering engaged. One final thing before we start moving, you got to make sure to open up your communications menu, go to ground crew, ground electric power.
Chief, turn off the ground power.
Turn off. And then
Copy.
do the exact same thing for air supply.
Chief, disconnect ground air supply.
Ground power is now off. Copy.
Ground air supply is now disconnected.
Alrighty, now it's disconnected and you are ready to taxi. If you were not to disconnect the ground and air supply before you taxied, there'll be a bit of the ground crew will be like, hey, what are you doing? You know, they'll complain. There's no real consequences for disconnecting it, but it's always good to remember. Otherwise you'll get that thing, and it's just a little bit embarrassing, we'll say. So then, yeah, now you can just start taxiing. And yeah, so we'll go ahead and hop into the RIO seat and start a cold start there. All right, we're back in the Tomcat, and welcome to the RIO seat. As you can see, there's quite a few buttons around the cockpit, but don't feel too discouraged. It's not as difficult as it looks. So now, as the RIO, first we'll just have to sit back for a little bit. Now, in the case of you having a human pilot, which you would almost always have if you're RIOing, they would connect the air supply and ground power. But since we don't have another person in the front, I'll go ahead and do that right now.
Chief, turn on the ground power. Chief,
Copy.
connect ground air supply.
Copy. Ground power is now on.
Alrighty,
Ground air supply is now connected.
now that air and power is on, we'll go here to the back left, just like in the pilot seat, but except this time it's a little bit more, easy to see. Turn our oxygen on, look behind us, and arm the ejection seat. You can also arm your pilot's ejection seat from back here, but that's a responsibility for him, but you can go ahead and do that if you wanted to. Next up, we'll go ahead and turn on a couple of systems here. So first system we need to turn on is right over here. It's a little bit hidden over here on the right hand side, but this is, if my head tracking will not mess up, right here is your data link controls, and right over here to the right is a switch to power it on. You want to push it forward to turn it on. And then we'll come over here to the left and go ahead and turn on our TACAN to transmit receive, and turn our radio on, which is this knob right here. It's currently on off. 2 clicks to the right turns it to transmit receive and guard. And then over here on the left hand side you have 2 knobs stacked on top of each other. You want to turn the bottom one once to the right, and that sets it to manual adjustment. And this is your ARC 189, and this is your low frequency radio. Your pilot has control of the high frequency radio, but you also, special with this one, also have control over the high frequency radio of your own. Usually in real life, the RIO is the one that does all the communications, and the pilot just sits up there and looks peachy while flying the aircraft. Now that that's done, you just go ahead and press Control C to close the canopy. and then you would acknowledge that we're ready to start. And at this point, the pilot would start turning on the engines, which since we don't have one, I'll go ahead and hop up there and turn them on. Alrighty, we have one of our engines spooling up, which is really all the power you need to get this thing going. So we'll look back down right here, and right here on the bottom left, where my mouse is hovering over, is your ICS comm switch. You want to go ahead and put that to the center to do hot mic, just like you would in the pilot seat, so you can freely talk with your pilot. Now that one of the engines is spooled up, what we can go ahead and do now is go ahead and right down here in the center is our HCU, or hand control unit, and we'll go ahead and see these two switches right here. The left one is IRTV. That controls the camera on the front end of the Tomcat, so you go ahead and just flick that forward all the way. And on the right hand side is your WCS XMT, or transmit. You want to just set that to standby. That is your actual radar. Standby will power your radar on, and transmit will obviously start, firing radio waves out of your radar. Once you've done that, now we have to go over to the left-hand side here. If you look right here on the left-hand side, it's a bit hidden and away from everything. It's all by its lonesome. This switch is the cooling switch to activate the liquid cooling for the AUG-9 and missiles. So if you have Phoenix missiles loaded up, which, you most often will unless you're doing specific missions, flip that forward to activate liquid cooling for both the AUG-9 and Phoenixes, and back for just the AUG-9. But it's good to just by default flip it forward anyways. Now that we've done that, we can go ahead and start our INS alignment procedure. So to begin, we'll go ahead and press Shift-K to open up our kneeboard, which will bring up this page. And as you can see right here, we have our long elevation and mag variance. These are the important parts of this to know. And it's not very difficult at all. All you need to do is, as you can see right here on our TID display on the top, our lat long is currently set for perfectly 0. That needs to change in order for us to start our INS alignment. So what we'll do, we'll go ahead and come down here to this keyboard right here, and all you got to do is hit clear, hit lat, or the 1 key, and then go ahead and hit N+E for north, and then we'll enter in our latitude, which is 43 degrees 26 minutes and 9 seconds. So 4, 3, 2, 6, 9, enter, and boom. As you can see, we've entered it right there. Next up, our longitude. You hit clear, longitude, or the 6 key. We are in the east hemisphere, so N+E, and then 3, 9, 5, 6, 7, enter, and boom, our longitude is there. Now there is another line directly above this that you can't really see. You'll be able to see if you can move your head up and down with your head tracking or with your view, and that actually shows the numbers you're entering, but I don't currently have that. It's not a big deal though. You just got to punch in the buttons, press enter, and they'll show up right here. Next up is our elevation, so we'll go ahead and hit clear. Altitude, which is the 4 button. Positive or negative, depending on whether or not we were above or below sea level. We are currently above it, so we'll hit positive. And then 104, enter. And boom, altitude set for 104. Now that we've done that, we can go ahead and close our kneeboard. And right here on the TID display on the left-hand side is a nav mode dial. You just go ahead and move that to ground since we are on the ground. CVA for carrier, and CAT for catapult. I will be going over these setups after this, but as you can see here, our INS is starting to align as displayed by our bar here, this echelon, and these numbers counting up. This is essentially just a timer counting upwards in minutes and a tenth of a decimal. So currently we are 0.5%, or we're 0.5 of a minute through, so 30 seconds. And INS alignment can take a long time. In the Tomcat, it's about 8 minutes, but if you have a stored heading, which I don't have right now because this is the preset mission, you can actually make that go a lot faster. And the way you would do that is when you go to your nav mode, right here, between the last two vertical dashed lines, there would be an ASH or ASH, and that would indicate to you that there is a stored heading for the mission, which allows you to align your INS faster. And the way you would do that is you go down here to your cap. This dial at the bottom where it has the category label, you just turn that to nav. And then right up here, you see all the options changed. The fourth option, or second from the top on the left, is your stored heading align, and you would just press that. And then you just continue your startup procedure as normal. You don't have to enter in anything special, and it would just align to the stored heading, which can make the INS alignment even faster. Most servers will have this, so just thank them for having it enabled. Now, while our INS is aligning, we can go ahead and move over to the right here and look at these three innermost panels. This first one is your radar warning receiver, and you just need to hit the bottom rightmost switch to power it on. And this will turn on your RWR. It takes a little bit to warm up. And then underneath that is your ECM. The Tomcat has a built-in ECM, and there's a bunch of special things in it, but currently the way DCS has ECM modeled, it doesn't really matter, so you can set that to standby. And then underneath that is your AN ALE39, which is simply your countermeasure dispenser. And you look over to the far right on it, and you switch this knob, or you switch this switch forward once for manual, twice for automatic. I normally like to do manual, just for the chaff being manual. If you have it set forward, the chaff will be automatic, but the flares will still be manual. So I just like to have it on manual so I can dump chaff and flares as I please. And yeah, that's all you have to do for setup while we wait for the INS to align. So I'll go ahead and let the INS align, and I'll get right back to you guys. Alright, and while we're waiting for the INS to align back on shore, as you can see, we are currently located on the carrier. We are currently on the John Stennis, and I'm going to show you the INS alignment for the carrier. So, if we just switch it to off, the carrier alignment is actually a lot simpler, if you could believe it, than doing it on land, as you do not need to manually enter your lat long. So all you got to do in the carrier INS alignment is go ahead and press Shift K to pull up your kneeboard. Use open and close bracket to cycle through the pages. And go ahead and cycle until you see Tactical Data Link Systems. This is all of the data link frequencies that are currently in your mission that you can connect to. And obviously, as you can see, the Stennis, which is the aircraft carrier, and Naval 11 is his designated call sign. So all you got to do is come over to your data link right here, and this will also double as a little bit of a data link tutorial. Now, as you can see, this is a 5-digit number for its frequency, but we only have 3 digits here to mess with. That is fine, no need to worry. All you got to do is pay attention to the last 3 digits in the frequency. In this case, it is 6, 3, and 0. So you would go to these dials right here, turn it to 6, 3, and 0. And now our data link is connected to the carrier. But in order to make sure they're talking to each other, specifically for our INS to align, if you look to the bottom on the far right, you'll see this mode switch, and you want to click that forward for Canes slash waypoint, or carrier INS slash waypoint. This will now make it so that our INS alignment will be talking directly to the carrier. And the reason you want to do this is because, unlike being on the ground normally, the carriers will normally be continuously moving non-stop. So you'll be using the carrier's actual navigation system to give your aircraft its GPS coordinates. Now, once you've done that, you can just close the data link, turn the nav mode to CVA, and then it'll begin aligning. Now, obviously on this, it's not going to start aligning for a bit, and that's just because this plane started up hot, but you don't have to worry about that. Also, if you wanted to do your INS alignment on the catapult, say you really have to scramble, there's hostiles 150 nautical miles away from the ship, then you would obviously not worry about anything and switch over to alignment catapult mode. This actually allows your INS to align while you're not in your parking brake. For CVA mode, you do need to make sure that the pilot is in the parking brake mode, but as you can see, in catapult mode, the parking brake is currently not set, and our INS is actually aligning. Now, you would obviously have this set again if you were over there on a catapult, or over there on a catapult, so you can quickly align your INS for a scramble maneuver. And one more thing to note is that if you see these 3 dashed vertical lines, that is an indication on different INS readiness levels. The last one is obviously a full INS mode. The first one is a very basic INS mode, and the only one you really need to pay much attention to is this second one, or the middle one. That one is, once your echelon gets to that point, your INS is aligned enough for you to be able to fire Phoenixes and Sparrows with your actual radar. If it weren't here yet, you wouldn't be able to fire them with your radar. You would only have to bore sight mode them, which would just essentially turn them into very big and fat AIM-9 Sidewinders. Alrighty, now the INS has been fully aligned, and you can denote this by looking at the progress bar, and on the far right, your echelon will have turned into a diamond with a circle in the center, or a dot. That says that the INS is fully aligned, so all you need to do is come over to your nav mode dial and set it to INS. And now you're completely ready to tell your pilot that he's ready to taxi, and he can, disengage the parking brake. Now, there is one more thing that you need to do before you continue, is go ahead and set up your mag variance, or magnetic variance. And the way you do that is just open up your kneeboard, and at the bottom it'll give you your mag variance. Currently our mag variance is plus 6.4 degrees. So all you got to do is go down here to your cap, make sure it's set to nav, and then the last option, or on the bottom right, is mag var heading. So all you do is press that. As you can see, there's a green arrow towards it now. And then you would just hit clear. And then you'd hit heading, which is the number 8 option. There you go. And then you would hit positive or negative based on whether or not your mag variance is positive or negative. In this case, it's positive. And then you just type in 6.4, enter. And as you can see, boom, 6.4. And you can close your kneeboard, and that's it. You've started up from cold in the RIO seats. Congratulations. Alrighty, and now you should know how to cold start the F-14 Tomcat in both the pilot and RIO seat as simply as possible. I hope it was very informative, and most importantly, I hope it was easy for you to understand. If you had any difficulties, or if you found this very helpful, go ahead and let me know in the comments. Leave a like if you really enjoyed the video, and share it with friends if they are interested in getting into the Tomcat and you want to point them towards an easy tutorial for them to follow. Other than that, if you aren't subscribed yet, go ahead and do that so you can stay up to date with all the videos that I'll be uploading. And yeah, thank you guys all for watching, and have a nice day.